This is Kelly with MDCR. We've started the webinar and we are live streaming.
Chair Clayton, this is Sean. It's 5:00 p.m.
Thank you, Sean. Okay. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. I now call to order the special meeting of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. Today is Monday, June 28th, 2021, and the time is 5 p.m. And this meeting is being held utilizing the Zoom web conferencing platform, as well as live streaming through Facebook and YouTube. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Chair Clayton.
Present.
Vice Chair Chairelisande.
Present.
Secretary Combs.
Present.
Commissioner Gasco-Bentley. Commissioner Roberson. Commissioner Corvo.
Present.
Commissioner Kosaraju.
Present.
Commissioner Lara.
Present.
Madam Chair, you do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. The next agenda item is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion to approve or amend the agenda?
So moved.
Motion has been by Commissioner Combs, has been seconded by Commissioner Lara. Is there any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all in favor of the motion to approve the agenda, say aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing no one opposed, that motion carries unanimously and the agenda is approved. Next on our agenda, we have opening matters. Again, good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special meeting of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. And I will now call on Deputy Director Engelman for our public comment protocol.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today's meeting will be recorded. All speakers must identify themselves by name first before speaking. If you require closed captioning and you are using Zoom, you can turn on captions by clicking on the CC icon on the lower right part of your screen. The Commission has already received written public comments and will only be accepting verbal public comments during the meeting. If attendees wish to speak during the public comment portion of the agenda, you must sign up to do so within the next 10 minutes by typing only your name and city you reside in the chat box located in the bottom of your Zoom screen. Please do not place your comments in the chat box. If unable to type in the chat box, please click on the icon labeled participants to raise and lower your hand at the lower center of the screen. When it is time for public comment, staff will call on attendees in the order in which we receive their request to speak, whether via chat or raised hand. MDCR staff will first verbally identify public comment speakers by name, and then that individual will be unmuted to speak and will be muted after their designated time frame for speaking. Then the public comment time frame for speaking will be 2 minutes. There will be a visual time timer on screen showing the following colors: green for 2 minutes, yellow for 30 seconds, and red for stop. The timekeeper will verbally remind each speaker when 30 seconds remain. For attendees who are calling in by phone to provide public comment, callers must enter *2 on their mobile device to raise and lower hands. MDCR staff will identify callers who wish to speak by the last 4 digits of their phone number. Please also be aware that MDCR staff will verbally warn any speakers only once if they use inappropriate, inflammatory, or disrespectful language. If use of that language continues, the speaker will be muted. For those who are joining us live via the MDCR Facebook page or the MDCR YouTube accounts, there will be an approximate 20-second delay between the actual Zoom meeting. Individuals who wish to deliver verbal public comments can only do so if they are attending via Zoom or by phone. And Madam Chair, that concludes the protocol.
Thank you, Deputy Director Engelmann. And just to reiterate, if you would like to speak during public comment, please leave your hand raised until that time. Please do not lower your hand until after you've been recognized and you have spoken. And please let the record reflect that we have been joined by Commissioner Roberson. Good afternoon, Commissioner Roberson. Okay.
Good afternoon. I'm sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. Good afternoon. And if we can have Ms. Thornton brought over to participate as a panelist. So June is Pride Month, and since we're having a special meeting, we will have a few special remarks from Cynthia Thornton, the Michigan Department of Civil Rights LGBTQ Liaison, who works in the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Division of the agency. We appreciate Ms. Thornton because she uses her external experience and alternative knowledge to contribute to the agency's outreach to and engagement of the LGBTQ community. Ms. Thornton, the floor is yours, and good afternoon.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me, Chair Clayton, Honorable Commission, Executive Director Johnson, executive team, and members of the public. I bring you greetings from the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Division, which consists of myself, Director of Equity Alfredo Hernandez, and Melissa Keyswetter, who is the Tribal Liaison and Native American Specialist for the department. As Chair Clayton has stated, my name is Cynthia L. Thornton, and I am the department's LGBTQ Liaison. I am cisgender, meaning I am not trans, so I identify as the gender I was assigned at birth. I am masculine. My apologies for that. Am I back on?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay. As I am, did I leave off at I'm the LGBT liaison? Is that the last you heard? Okay. I'm cisgender, meaning I am not trying to identify as the gender I was assigned at birth. I am masculine identified, which means that while I am female, I am very much in touch with my masculine side, so that my manner and appearance most often naturally relate and express myself in a manner that our society typically associates with males. And I am a lesbian, a woman whose primary physical and emotional attractions are to other women. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And before I go further, let me say happy Pride to those in the LGBT community who may be watching or listening this evening. Some of you may recognize me as the outspoken union steward who gave public comment Technology is wonderful when it works, so I apologize. Some of you may recognize me as the outspoken union steward who gave public comment in March 2020. While no longer the union steward, I bring that same outspokenness to the role of the LGBTQ liaison. And so while we have had LGBTQ liaisons in the past, this is the first time in the 10+ years that I have worked for MDCR that we have had a liaison who is LGBTQ, who is very much culturally competent and is a leader in the LGBT community. This is a critical step in expanding and strengthening MDCR's relationship with the LGBT community, as we continue to break down barriers to understanding, and this forward-thinking decision necessarily increases LGBTQ visibility and suggests a demonstrative commitment to equal employment opportunity. While a good deal of my work will be outward-facing as we seek to connect with LGBTQ people statewide, my work will also include not only increasing LGBTQ competency within the agency, but increasing and understanding the struggles many LGBTQ people face so that the agency can better serve LGBTQ people when those struggles bring them to MDCR to seek services. To that end, I am proud to share that due to opportunities provided by the director and leadership, as encouraged and supported by the commission, my DEI colleagues supported and joined me in a panel discussion called LGBTQ and Allies Coming Out in the Workplace. Rather than focus exclusively We're almost there. Am I back live?
Yes, you're live.
Okay. To that end, I am proud to share that due to opportunities provided by the director and leadership, as encouraged and supported by the commission, my DEI colleagues supported and joined me in a panel discussion called LGBTQ and Allies Coming Out in the Workplace. Rather than focus exclusively on cultural competency, this panel was a sharing of personal stories by MDCR staff and the impact LGBTQ discrimination has had not only on LGBTQ employees, but on straight allies who have witnessed discrimination or the emotional toll such discrimination has taken on their loved ones. Excuse me. To that end, I look forward to continuing the growth of the department, the strengthening of our bonds. Most likely, the choices that we make here will save a life that may be that of someone that we love. I look forward to our continued compliance, not only because of the law, but because it's consistent with our mission overall. Thank you for the opportunity, Chair Clayton.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thornton. Thank you so much. And thank you for your commitment to the department. And we are so pleased to see you in this role. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we are going to hear from Dr. Truman Hudson. Is Dr. Hudson with us as a panelist yet, or can he be moved over, please?
Chair, he's being moved over now.
Thank you.
Hello.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, Dr. Hudson. Let me go on and introduce you. Thank you. Glad you are here with us. So in keeping with the Pride theme, our next speaker is Dr. Truman Hudson Jr. He is a professor at Wayne State University and co-designed the inaugural courses for the LGBTQ Studies and Education Initiative being introduced in the fall semester. Dr. Hudson has 31 years of experience in education and is interested in exploring students' voices and perspectives in school reform efforts and ensuring diversity, equity, and access and inclusion in K through 20 curriculums. Today, he is going to speak to us about the importance of LGBTQ youth voices being included in conversations about civil rights and education equity. Good afternoon, Dr. Truman, and thank you, Truman Hudson, and thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Thank you for having me, and thank you, commissioners, for giving me this space to support an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I think to most of us in the state of Michigan. As an instructor of multicultural education, I've had the opportunity to work with students across the spectrum. And what I found is one thing that all students have in common, that we all have in common, is they want to be loved, cared for, and acknowledged for who they are. And I think if we process our PK-12 experience, most of us have experienced good times and bad times. Some of us had challenges with adjusting and adapting. Some of us were honor students. I can't say that I was that person when I was going through my PK-12 journey. That didn't happen until after I got to the university level. Some of us were bullied and some of us weren't. But today, the issues that the young people are facing are probably greater than anything that we've seen in the past in our lifetime. For those who are on this call who are probably in my generation, and I identify as a cisgender male. My pronouns are him, his, he, and while there are certain things that I won't aren't specific barriers to me as a cisgender male, more specifically a cisgender African American male in society. There are barriers for others in their journey towards trying to just attain education. Just a little about me in short. My courses focus on community-based education, multicultural education, LGBTQ studies, foundations, and ethics. And when I bring all of these together and we look at it through an interdisciplinary lens, and we take an interdisciplinary approach to trying to identify ways in which we can support students, what we found is, in many cases, what's absent when we get into school reform is student voice. Even when we think about the reform efforts that most of us have seen in our limited lifetimes, those of us who have seen the development of the Educational Achievement Authority or even other school movements, a lot of those movements start with us as adults making decisions on what should be done to turn things around, but we never really sit back and think, what is it that the young people want? And when we get to the point of saying, what is it that they want? We've already made the decision on what should be done. And once we make the decision, we want them to either co-sign on it or kind of like just say that they participated in the process. So my research is grounded in the critical race theory and action research. And the significance of critical race and action research is that it allows you to focus in on the power of race and underrepresentation and how it plays into how we interact in society and how we interact in the microcosm of society, i.e. in schools, in communities, and in other spaces that oftentimes where we see a lot of the tension occurring. The research is also grounded in Urie Bronfenbrenner's framework, which is the ecological systems theory. And the ecological systems theory framework argues that over a lifetime, we're impacted by a bunch of systems. And those systems informs how we engage and interact with people, but also how we see ourselves. And then when I move into the framework that I attempt to bring to students around identity, when we get into Crenshaw's research on the intersectionalities of our identities, what we find is we wear a bunch of hats to try and determine who we are, and society hasn't caught up with the newness or the way in which we've awakened to who we are and how we identify in our spaces. So intersectionality along with these systems, and these systems are impacting how we operate. We're still maintaining a homogeneous ideology around how life should be versus looking at the richness of, when we look at these colors, the richness of what everybody brings to this experience. Everybody brings something broad and unique and powerful to the journey, but our lens around, especially when it comes to education, is so narrow that we have a tendency of only focusing through a Eurocentric cisgender perspective. And when we do that, we leave out the voices of women, people who identify in the LGBTQ plus community, people who identify in the Asian community, people who identify in the indigenous community, people identifying across all of these different communities. But yet we say we want to make change in America and we want to make change in education and we want things to be better, but we can never get better or make the change if we continuously focus on the way things used to be. So in looking at LGBTQ plus studies in education, what prompted us to design a program at Wayne State University is that we realized that those voices, the voices of our students and educators and community members, were missing. What we also found is, as we prepared teachers to go into the classroom and administrators to go into the buildings and into our school districts, and because our student pipeline is diverse, we found through the research it's an unsafe space for our youth and the LGBT community to actually operate in. And when we look at these data points and we see that it's unsafe and that it's unwelcoming and that there's more bullying that's occurring and that there is a lack of support from educators when it comes to students and how they want to identify, but the teachers or educators are attempting to still hold on to the doctrine that they were familiar with. Because again, we're primed to think a certain way, and going back to the systems theory, we've believed that this is what we see is what we see, and that's it. There's nothing more to it. But when a person says that I am she, her, their, they, whatever that's that pronoun, that's their pronoun. But the unfortunate part is our educational system isn't ready to accept that. Then you have students who aren't ready to accept that. And when you have a young person who identifies in the LGBTQ plus community as a person that doesn't fit in the quote unquote so-called norm, because they're being bullied and they're constantly being challenged and not receive support, we see that it impacts how they perform in school. It impacts how they perform post-graduation, and it impacts how they perform as adults. So what we see is there's low GPAs. We also see that there's low planning and going, or if any, the less likelihood that they'll go to college. And also we see that the students have lower self-esteem. Another data point to give consideration to, again, young people in the LGBTQ plus community have a higher rate of discrimination than any other group. And this is data from 2019. So this is just a couple of years old, but in 2019, the data shows that they have more young people in that community are not as supported, and because they're discriminated against, again, they tend to move away from the system. And because they were moving away from the system, these young people have a higher level of depression, suicide, substance abuse. But the one that I've wrestled with for quite some time, because I worked with the former Mayor Archer and his team back in, I can't even remember those years because if I said it, people would laugh. But when I worked with the Archer administration, we were working on the homeless movement in Detroit, and we created the Homeless Action Network of Detroit. And we were working with HUD and MISTA to find ways in which we can address homelessness. What we found was homeless youth who are homeless are couch surfing. So those data points are hard to collect. But as we continue to track the data, we find that the young people in the LGBTQ community are more likely to be homeless than the youth who are not in that population. So if we have more young people who are homeless, the question is, what are we doing as Michiganders to ensure that they're not in that space? What are we doing as Michiganders to ensure that when they're homeless, if they go through an episode of homelessness, that they have some type of support? And the unfortunate part is, I think there's only one entity in metropolitan Detroit that actually provides housing specifically for youth in that population, and that's the Ruth Ellis Center. But we don't have enough spaces where these young people can actually get the supports that they need to deal with being in and out of homelessness. And the unfortunate part is that when a young person comes out, or if a teacher makes the mistake of outing them before they're ready to be outed, they're thrown out of their homes. So when they're thrown out of their homes, that's when they start the couch surfing, whole couch surfing situation. Then they move into suicide. Then they go into this crime, and then they go into these other abusive tracks. So there's this cycle, this vicious cycle that occurs, and these young people are crying for our help in silence. And as they cry for silence, they move towards this risk behavior associated with substance abuse and suicide. This is not all, this is just a snapshot of what are some of the challenges that young people in the community are experiencing. Now, the way in which we can get there, again, is we start out by, I introduce myself as Dr. Truman Hudson Jr., he, him, his, those are my pronouns, but it's as simple as educators becoming trained and people in our state becoming trained with understanding that everybody has a different pronoun. Everybody on this call has a way in which they want to be acknowledged. I see commissioner at the front of your name before your name. I see chair. So everybody has a way in which they want to be acknowledged. And then we also have that other part of our name that fits in it, you know, the name that was given to us. Some people don't want the name that was given to them at birth because that doesn't represent them. And it's okay for them to embrace a new identity. And I don't know if you paid attention to the commercials lately, but there's a credit card company now that's actually allowing young people and people who want to identify with the name that they've chosen to put that new name on their credit card. And that's important because that gives them empowerment. And if a person discloses, when they disclose, it's important to confidentiality and keeping that close to breast until they choose to come out about who they are as an individual. Also, schools should be more reaffirming based on the research and having dress codes that are not as prohibitive and prescriptive to the cisgender framework that we're all most familiar with. And I can say that I had the opportunity for my son to attend a school in Detroit, the metropolitan Detroit. And when he first went into the school, he was like, wow. The great thing is they had the bathrooms that didn't have signs on them. You can go into any bathroom that you wanted to go into, but the students were accepted the way they wanted. They were dressing the way they wanted to dress, and they were soaring academically and doing great things. Arts Academies in the Woods. Arts Academies in the Wood actually gave my son and young people like him this space where they could tap into their creative energy, and they weren't in this space of looking at how does gender identity play out. Gender wasn't even an issue. Gender identification wasn't the concern. The concern was student first. So because it was student first, the dress code was dress how you feel. And those young people have gone on to soar, go to university, and become greater individuals inside of society. The other thing is also school facilities and making sure that the facilities I reference to the bathrooms at my son's former high school. The realities are, with or without a sign on the bathroom, everybody has to go to the restroom. So why do we have to have signs? And signs actually are ways in which some people feel uncomfortable with coming out, so they don't know which bathroom to go to when it says girls, boys, men, women. Well, let's look at a new space in where we can create more support for young people, because if not, the realities are we are going to get into greater challenges as we continue to advance. Another way in which we can work with young people to support them in our schools is to create gay-straight alliances. And what that consists of is having people like myself, who's an ally, to be a supporter of the young people and giving them safe spaces to talk about different issues that matter to them. And when they have this safe space, then I can help leverage my capital as an educator to help them advance their agenda. But not only that, help empower them so they can take the front lead on the issues that matter to them. So then they can create this movement, kind of like where we're going with this whole Civil Rights Commission, where we want to empower the voices and bring equity, diversity, equity, and inclusion into these spaces. And when we create these new gay straight alliances, then we can get in a space where the young people can inform us on what the harassment policies should look like. So before you implement the policies, let's talk to the young people, because they can give us input on what matters. And then when we look at programs in general inside of the schools, it's imperative that educators get trained in this space. Just like we get trained, we have to take psychology courses, and there are prerequisite courses for us to engage with students at different levels. It should be a part of the standards in the state of Michigan. It should also be a part of what the schools are looking for when they recruit teachers. Are you familiar with working with these young people? And if not, we have a program where we can train you, and we're going to constantly monitor how you interact with the young people, because their lives matter. In regards to Wayne State, this fall we have a self-paced online course in LGBTQ plus studies, and our courses explore policies and politics in education, the intersectionality of education, spirituality and how spirituality plays into education, and we also explore pop culture. And and that's all, while it's in LGBTQ studies, we also grounded in this critical race theoretical framework that is also picked up in our urban education and equity studies program. And then I want to say that from a pride perspective, our faculty and staff are welcoming, and we have a strong pride team on campus. So those young people know that they can reach out to faculty and staff who are trained to support. But we also have what we call our Women Resource Center that actually provides support. While it's women resources, we provide support to all young people who need support on that campus. And then locally, we partner with LGBT Detroit as well as Affirmations because they are currently working with adults, but they're creating programs to help support the work that is happening on the ground with young people. And that is my discussion, Madam Chair. I can't hear you.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Hudson. And I just want to, before we see if our commissioners have any questions, I want to apologize to anyone from our deaf community who may have been watching this. I believe it was on Facebook, and if it was on Facebook, because of the particular way the screen sharing took place, you were not able to see the interpreter. So we do apologize for that, and we will be looking to see if there's a way that we can make Dr. Hudson's presentation available to those who still want to actually see that. So, because that was very good information you shared with us, Dr. Hudson. So we want to make sure everyone who wants the information is able to get it. Do we have any questions or comments from any of our commissioners before we move on to Mr. Wood's presentation? Anyone? Okay, all right. Well, thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Lara, yes.
I had to find my mute button. Well, thank you very much for your comments. Having work with children of all different ages, realizing how important it is for them to feel honored as well as accepted in order for them to do their best. These are excellent initiatives towards that end. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lara.
And just so everyone knows, as we said, June is Pride Month, but another reason why we thought, since we were having this special meeting, we wanted to have these extra presentations, because we are still working at how we're going to implement the recommendations from the Education, Equity in Michigan report. And one of the recommendations is to have a youth group to partner with the council to help determine what equity in education looks like. And someone made mention to me that while it's important to have youth voices, it's important to have a diversity of youth voices in that conversation. So that is what today's presentation was supposed to bring us. So thank you again very much, Dr. Hudson. Much appreciated. You are more than welcome to stay with us for the remainder of the meeting if you like. Our team is just going to move you back over to the attendees list, but we do hope you'll still be able to stay and watch the rest of the meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. It is now time for our final presentation of the evening under presentations, and that is with Mr. Edward Woods III. He is the Communications and Outreach Director for the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, and will tell us about their work and the importance of Michigan's residents participating in the redistricting process to ensure equitable representation. And Mr. Woods, the floor is yours, and I believe our team is going to handle the screen share for you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chairperson Clayton. Thank you so much, Michigan Department of Civil Rights Commission. It's good to be here. And to your stellar Executive Director, none other than the legendary John Johnson himself. Thank you for coordinating this and making things happen. We were trying to get on the schedule, and Chairperson Clayton is tough, but she was able to find some time to get here. And Michigan's new redistricting process is also a tough cookie. And we want to make sure we can get the word out, because we need you, commissioners, to help us spread the word about Michigan's new redistricting process. And we want to partner with you in the communities where you have influence across the state of Michigan, because we don't want to let anyone be left behind in this new redistricting process. I'm going to share my screen and honor my time so I can come back again. They say if you want to come back again, you.
Actually, Mr. Woods, our team is going to actually share the screen for you with the presentation. Okay. I believe Deputy Director Engelman, is that you who should be doing the screen share now? Can someone let me know who's going to do the screen share?
I think Mary is speaking, but she's on mute.
Mary, you're muted.
Yes, I am trying to share it. I've got a couple of things going on, Chair, but let me see if I could do this really quick here. Here we go. And tell me if you can see it. Here we go.
Yes, thank you.
1 second. I'm
Okay.
going to put it on full screen for us so that it's prettier. And go to slideshow and it's not going to the slideshow.
Mary, this is Kelly. Click where it says resume slideshow in the little box. Oh, go from beginning.
Oh, from beginning here.
And there's a box that pops up that says resume slideshow.
Here we go. Oh, here we go. And let me go. Here we go.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Woods, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Once again, appreciate that. And thank you for all of those that are helping behind the scenes. As Chairperson Clayton so clearly stated, my name is Edward Woods III. I'm the Communications and Outreach Director for the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. And if we could just go to the next slide. In 2018, Michigan voters made an intentional and deliberate decision to ensure that voters, not legislators, would take responsibility for nonpartisan redistricting and created the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. The Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission is the sole authority for drawing fair and independent maps through meaningful public participation. It's comprised of 13 randomly selected Michigan residents that includes 4 who affiliate as Democrats, 5 who affiliate as independents, and 4 who affiliate as Republicans. This randomly selection process was conducted by the Michigan Department of State, and the Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission is responsible for redistricting Michigan's congressional, which is 13 seats, House, which is 110 seats, and Senate districts, which represents 38 seats. Before the commission can draw any redistricting plan, they must hold at least 16 public hearings throughout the state of Michigan. This week concludes our last week of public hearings. The commissioner, we call these public hearings listening tours, where we can obtain feedback about communities of interest, feedback about how feel the lines were drawn. And instead of doing 10, which was in the Constitution, the commission elected to do 16. The purposes for the public hearing was to inform the public about the new redistricting process, share the purposes and responsibilities of the commission, and to obtain information about the public about potential redistricting plans. In other words, this whole process is about engaging Michigan residents to tell the commission how to draw the lines. Once again, it's all about public engagement. For our final week, tomorrow, we're going to be at the Van Dyke Mortgage Convention Center in Muskegon. And if you're in town or in the area, we would love to see you tomorrow at Muskegon. Our public hearing starts at 5:00 p.m. And then on Thursday, July 1, we'll be in Grand Rapids at the DeVos Place Convention Center. And our public hearing, if you're in that area, also starts again at 5:00 p.m. The redistricting criteria is in ranked order. In ranked order, these are the 7 criteria for redistricting. 1, equal population and the Voting Rights Act. We must follow all applicable laws that have equal population in each of the districts. 2, they have to be geographically contiguous. 3, communities of interest. We'll talk more about that in the next slide. The 4th criteria, no disproportionate advantage to any political party. 5, no favor or disfavor to an incumbent elected official or a candidate. 6, reflect consideration of county, city, and township boundaries. And then 7, be reasonably compact. Communities of interest can include art districts. It can include waterfront communities. They are, when we say communities of interest, they come under the definition of cultural or historical characteristics or economic interests. Communities of interest do not include relationships with political parties, incumbents, or political candidates. Although race is important, it is not the only factor when it comes to communities of interest. So arts districts, medical districts, waterfront communities, a variety of different things when it comes to community of interest, as long as it ties in to being a cultural or historical characteristics or of economic interest. Ways to engage. For those who are listening and want to learn more about Michigan's redistricting process, you can do email or text alerts at www.michigan.gov/MICRC. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter at redistrictingMI. You can submit a public comment at www.michigan.gov/MICRC. You can request a presentation. We would love to come to your group or anywhere across the state of Michigan at www.michigan.gov/MICRC. For those who may not have internet access, you can mail us at MICRC, P.O. Box 30318, Lansing, Michigan 48909, or you can give us a call at 1-833-UDRAW. That's 1-833-968-3729. Once again, you can also come out to one of our weekly meetings or public hearings to provide comment. Bottom line, we want to hear from as many Michigan residents as possible. We want to make sure all voices are heard, and we couldn't find a better community to engage in this to ensure that all voices are heard than the Michigan Department of Civil Rights through the Michigan Civil Rights Commission. I want to thank you so much for your time. I believe I'm in my time frame, so I can come back again because I did not do a prophetic 10 minutes, but a literal 10 minutes. Chair Clayton, I would like to yield back to you. If there's any Q&A, I'm more than happy to answer them at this time. Thank you again.
Thank you so much. If we can stop the screen share, please. Thank you. Okay, we can go to our regular viewing process also. While we're getting back to our regular screen, did any of our commissioners have any questions or comments for Mr. Woods? And Mr. Woods, before that, I do have a question for you. Is it possible for anyone who's not able to physically be in, I believe it's Muskegon and Grand Rapids for your last two meetings, are they able to participate virtually? Can they Zoom in? Can they watch it online on Facebook? Absolutely.
We have our Facebook is Redistricting MI, and we also have a YouTube channel, Michigan Independent Citizens Redistricting Commission, MICRC, and we have a channel that airs live. All of our meetings are live. We do live stream for each and every one of our meetings. We have the great interpreters that work with you, work with us to ensure that we have sign language. We also have translation in Arabic, Spanish, and Bengali as well. And so we want to make sure that we can get in touch. You can also provide comments if you're not able to travel and can't get to a public comment or a weekly meeting. For public comments, if you sign up before noon on the day of the public hearing, you will be included to provide public comments either virtually through Zoom, or you can do it via the phone if you do not have internet access.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Woods. And can I please get the full gallery view? I can't see any of the commissioners if their hands are full. I think this is still on spotlight view. Whoever's managing the meeting.
And then Chair Clayton, one more thing to follow up to your question. If anyone needs assistance, they can call 211 and they can assist them in signing up to provide comments to the commission.
Oh, that's good information. Thank you. Let me see.
Chair Clayton,
yes.
this is Commissioner Robertson. I don't have a question, but Commissioner Combs has his hand up. I can see the whole view.
Thank you. Deputy Director Engelman, can someone give me verbal information? Let me know if the screen is being taken care of.
Chair Clayton, this is Mary speaking. I have full view. Do you have your view on?
Let me see. Maybe it's on speaker view. Go to gallery view.
Yes, ma'am.
Got it. Thank you. It didn't switch back for some reason. Okay, got it. Thank you so much. Okay, Commissioner Combs, your hand was raised.
Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. To Mr. Edward Woods, is that you, my friend?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you well.
Okay, I was in a conversation with a lawyer that's involved with this process, and he was raising some very serious concerns about the elimination or the attempt to eliminate gerrymandering by mitigating race and ethnicity. And it was his observation from the formulas being proposed that if in fact the current redistricting plan that seems to be going forth becomes codified, what will happen is it would eliminate the representation of African-American and minorities in the House and the Senate by mitigating race and ethnicity and inculcating it in the general population of the area. So he asked me, he said, well, isn't there a group out there, an organization that can speak to this issue from an activist disposition to call for the different scenarios that will come forth from a redistricting that would mitigate representation for African Americans in both the House and the Senate? Your thoughts?
One, there's no plan out, so I'm not sure what plan the gentleman was referring to. Before we can draw any maps or plans, we have to hold the public hearings. We have not completed that yet. And I know there's a lot of speculation, rumors, and innuendos, but let me assure you, there's no plan. There's no plan that has been done. We are seriously on a listening tour to hear what people are saying. And we appreciate all the public feedback and want additional public feedback. And I would encourage the gentleman you're referring to provide some public comments in our public comment portal at www.michigan.gov/MICRC. He's more than welcome to draw maps, identify communities of interest. But as of right now, the commission has not drawn any maps, whether they're congressional, state house, or state senate, because we haven't finished our public hearings. But I am aware of rumors and innuendos and all this other stuff, but we don't have that. Everything has to be done in a open and transparent process. All of our meetings are online, including the randomly selection process by the Michigan Department of State. So he's more than welcome to look at the video, but he will note that there is I repeat again, no maps have been proposed, identified, or created by the commission because we have not finished our public hearing schedule.
And again, your communication information relative to contact is public knowledge. Is that true?
Sure.
So your phone number would be?
517-335-3333 is our number in Lansing. And if you want to call toll free, it's 833-UDRAW, 833-UDRAW, and that's 968-3729.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Combs. And Mr. Woods, I just want to chime in and commend the commission on the great job you are doing on your community engagement. I think your presentation today is the fourth one that I've heard. When you had the meeting a couple of weeks ago in Detroit, I did attend virtually, and I believe Director Johnson was there in person for that one. And I would just encourage anyone, no matter where you are in the state, even if you are not able to be at the last two meetings in Muskegon and Grand Rapids in person, because you do have the option to participate virtually. And if you have not participated yet, please take full advantage of these last two opportunities to have your voice heard in a meeting, but then also you have the opportunity to submit comments, public comment via all the information that Mr. Woods presented. And I think Director Johnson, we should be able to make sure that we can even put that last slide with all the contact information on our social media to make sure that people who might not have been able to write it down quickly will know how to contact the redistricting commission. Okay. Any other commissioners with comments? Oh, yes, sir.
Yeah, Chair Clayton, I just want to thank you again for this wonderful opportunity, but also thank Director Johnson and his team, Gwen Moffitt and Vicki Levengood, have been with us and partnering with us on our weekly calls now. They used to be bi-weekly, they've gone weekly. So appreciate the engagement, but really would also appreciate the commission's engagement. So if there's any town hall meetings, presentations, any outreach efforts that you can connect us with because of your role as commissioners and your sphere of influence, we really want to make that ask. We want to make that ask for all of the representative groups of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, because we just think if we can get every Michigan gander included, our product will be that much stronger. So anything that you or any of the commissioners can do to help us out in spreading the word, whether through town halls or partnership, I would greatly appreciate it. And so our commissioners would as well.
Thank you very much. Any other commissioners with any other questions or comments before we move on with our agenda? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mr. Wood, so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, our next agenda item is public comment. Ms. Sanford, do we have any hands raised for public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening. Actually, we've combed through the attendee list and there are no hands raised at this time.
Okay, seeing no hands raised, and I believe it's been well over 30 minutes that we've had public comment open. We are now going to close public comment and move on to our next agenda item, which is commission business. And this will be a report from the Personnel Committee on a permanent executive director selection process. As my fellow commissioners know, and anyone who is viewing who was at our meeting on May 24th, the commission unanimously voted to appoint John Johnson as interim director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights effective June 2nd. At the same meeting, we appointed a personnel committee consisting of Vice Chair El Hassan, Commissioner Lara, and myself, who would then meet as we've done with our previous executive director selections and make a recommendation to the full commission for a process to move forward for selecting a permanent executive director. We are going to begin with Commissioner El Hassan summarizing the historical context for our recommendation, and then Commissioner Lara will give the process for the implementation of that recommendation. So Commissioner El Hassan, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Clayton. Good evening, everyone. So I don't know about a summary of all the events that occurred over the course of the last many months, but I'll try my best to at least give you a brief synopsis about why we are proceeding in the manner that we are recommending, and in particular with Mr. Johnson. You may recall, because it was a very public process and there was full transparency and disclosure, that we actually went through 2 rounds of separate interviews and applications. Once, I believe, in January of 2020, and then we started again, and I don't want to say just January because the process was over the course of a few months by the time we went through applications, reviewed applications, conducted multiple interviews, and then made some recommendations at a number of meetings about who would proceed to the next phase of interviews. So we did that once in January. We ended up, as many of you know, not selecting or not obtaining an executive director for a multitude of reasons that I won't go into a lot of detail here. So we started up the process again in June of 2020 to yet again try to find an executive director. As we went through both of those processes, I just want to note specifically that the interim executive director, John Johnson, was at the top of our list in both rounds, both in January and in June. He did proceed in January as top, I think it was 3 or 4. Not January, I'm sorry, our first application process, he was in the top 4. And in the second application process, he was also in the top qualified candidate pool. For those reasons, we proceeded, as Chair Clayton just mentioned, to recommend him as an interim director in May. However, I just want to talk a little bit, if I may, about his qualifications and the criteria and experience he has. That was shared fully and again, with full transparency during both interview processes. He is a lawyer. He's done this exact work. And to add to that, during Executive Director White's tenure as director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, he actually recommended and brought in Mr. Johnson to serve as the legislative liaison, given his experience. So Mr. Johnson's fully ingrained in the department. He's got the background. He's got the staff connections. It only seemed natural to make the recommendation to this body and certainly to the department that Mr. John Johnson serve as the interim executive director. Having said that, however, we recognize that, you know, everybody needs to sort of get comfortable and work through a process that works for everyone. And so Commissioner Lara had specifically recommended that we allow this sort of time period to assess, determine if that decision is appropriate, if it works for everybody involved. And so we have some time between today and what we've already experienced since May to really get a full understanding of what Mr. Johnson's plan is. He has shared that plan with us. We have thoroughly reviewed it. I know Chair Clayton has also shared it with this body. And Mr. Johnson can speak certainly about that today. And he's carrying those sort of implemented changes that Director White has already had already started. And so I think it's appropriate to make a recommendation as we proceed about sort of just assessing how, although I have no doubt, but assessing Mr. Johnson's ability and capability in this department based on his prior experience, based on him going through the interviews, based on the fact that he came in sort of our top 3 selection of recommended executive directors twice in 2020. And so it only seems appropriate that we would now assess whether he should be the full-time, not interim executive director. I'm going to turn it over to Commissioner Lara to talk a little bit about what that process will look like. And then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chairelisande. Commissioner Lara?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Chairelisande, Chair Clayton. As you know, the commission voted unanimously on May 22nd to appoint John Johnson as an intern director of the Michigan Department of Civil Rights, effective June 2nd. And we did review thoroughly his information and qualifications and the experience that he brings to bear, not just recent, but long-term experience, particularly in the areas of running and maintaining law practices and law offices, which, as you know, the Department of Civil Rights is entrusted with a lot of that role. So many organizations, when vacancies occur at senior levels, appoint an executive or an interim executive for one of 2 reasons. One reason is to provide leadership for that organization while a search is conducted. The other reason to appoint an interim is that there may already be an excellent candidate in-house or in the organization. That person is elevated to the leadership position, but at an interim level. This is what we commissioners have decided to do. The Michigan Civil Rights Commission Personnel Committee met with Interim Director Johnson to review his 6-month plan. We determined that this plan, in conjunction with the excellent strategic plan that former Director White developed, takes the Michigan Department of Civil Rights in the direction of the strategic plan. The Personnel Committee will review Interim Director Johnson's progress before our next regularly scheduled meeting on July 26th, at which time a vote will be taken whether to appoint interim director to the permanent executive director position. Thank you, Chair Clayton.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Lara. Any comments or questions from any commissioners? And then we'll give Mr. Interim Director Johnson a few minutes in case there are any words he wants to say. But do we have any questions beforehand? Commissioner Roberson, yes, ma'am.
Yes, Madam Chair, I just had one question. Was the appointment that we made in May, I thought that appointment was for interim. So are we extending the term of interim, or are we, okay. So
yes,
the recommendation tonight is to extend the term of interim?
Right. When we appointed him for June 2nd to begin as interim, we did not put an end date on that appointment. So what we're doing today is we're establishing that he will remain interim until our next regularly scheduled meeting on June 26th, July 26th, at which time we would then vote on whether or not to appoint interim director Johnson as a permanent director. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Any other questions from any other commissioners? Okay. Interim Director Johnson, any comments you would like to make?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, commissioners. I appreciate you considering my candidacy and appointing me to the interim director position. I think, as Chair Clayton has said, she has forwarded to you my thoughts about what the department can be doing during the next 6 months. I intend to work very aggressively with our staff on the enforcement aspect of our work to make sure that what we have in-house is taken care of in a due and diligent fashion so that we can spend the latter part of this year sort of reintroducing ourselves to the civil rights community. We have a number of activities planned that will allow us to reintegrate ourselves and allow us to bring together the civil rights activists throughout the state to sort of do a needs assessment, look at where we are, and plan a strategy going forward. Again, the next 3 months, though, will be spent in-house looking at Director White's strategic plan, executing that, and doing some things internally that I think will put us in a very good position come September to go about our business of enforcing the civil rights of Michigan citizens. We will be engaged in enforcement. Our motto and our plan of action will be to engage in enforcement, engagement, and education and equity. Those will be our 4 mantras, and we'll be organizing our work in order to accommodate those 3 goals.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion?
So moved.
What is the motion, Commissioner Combs?
That we extend the interim status of the current executive director, John Johnson, until we are able to vote on his permanence.
My apologies, Chair. I don't, and I respectfully indicate that I don't believe a motion is necessary or that this is an action item, because when the appointment was made in May, there wasn't an end date. There wasn't a date certain about how long the interim nature of this position would last. We're merely outlining a process by which we will vote in July whether to consider a permanent position to Mr. Johnson, I think, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong.
What I was thinking, and this follows how we did in January of 2020, and I believe it was May of 2020, once the personnel committee came back and made a recommendation, or whatever the committee made a recommendation for the process to select the executive director, then the full body took a vote to agree on that process. So the process of the recommendation that was made by the personnel committee was for interim director Johnson to remain interim until July 26th. And at that time, we would then vote on the permanent director.
So if I may make a friendly amendment, Commissioner Combs, just merely a motion to accept the process as outlined today. I suspect that would be the appropriate motion to proceed.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So, and that makes sense since you are a member also of the personnel committee. So thank you. So we have we have a motion on the floor from Vice Chair Commissioner Chairelisande. May I have a second, please?
Second.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Lara. We will do a roll call vote on this. If I can have the clerk, please call the roll.
Chair Clayton,
Yes.
Vice Chair Chairelisande,
Yes.
Secretary Combs,
Yes.
Commissioner Gasco-Bentley, Commissioner Robeson,
Yes.
Commissioner Corvo,
Yes.
Commissioner Kosaraju, and Commissioner Lara.
Yes.
Madam Chair, you do have, the motion passes.
Commissioner Kosaraju, I don't believe, do we hear your yes? I think you might have been muted. I don't know if we heard.
I'm sorry about that. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so that motion has passed. And so Look forward to continue working with you in the interim, Director Johnson. And
Thank you very much.
our next item of business are commissioner closing comments. Do we have any closing comments from any of our commissioners that we have here? Okay, seeing none, our final agenda item is adjournment of the meeting. Our next regular meeting will convene virtually on Monday, July 26, 2021 at 5 p.m. It will highlight the 31st anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it is being planned by our own Kimberly Woolridge, who is also the state's director of ADA compliance and statewide training. And I've seen a draft of what she's planning, and it is going to be a very good meeting. So I'm looking forward to that. So we'll see everyone then. May I have a motion to adjourn this meeting?
So moved.
Support.
Moved by Vice Chair El Hassan, seconded by Commissioner Combs. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries unanimously, and the meeting of the Michigan Civil Rights Commission adjourned at 6:03 p.m. Thank you, everyone. See you next month.
Happy summer.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Aye.
Bye.